Now, I do want to start off by warning you that there will be spoilers for the finale of Rebels in this video, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'd first ask what you're waiting for since it was fantastic, and then suggest you check it out first before watching this video. And speaking of that fantastic ending, I dare say it's left us all wondering what comes next, and hoping that any day now, we'll get an announcement about the next Star Wars animated show. And I really do think that announcement will come very, very soon, thus capitalizing off the buzz and excitement left in the wake of Rebels, and that we'll even learn we'll be getting a new show as soon as this coming fall. And I say that because why else rush Rebels to a conclusion unless you had a reason to? In the span of 3 weeks, they gave us the final 7 episodes. And why do that, especially with how good they were, unless you were trying to make way for something else? Or should I say, begin promoting something else that, likely, is going to be even bigger than what Rebels was and will be launching in the relative near future. And I do think whatever comes next will be bigger than Rebels, both in terms of the budget, thus upping the quality of animation, and in terms of scale of the overall story. I could even see the next show moving from Disney XD to another channel to help exposure and maybe to bring in some people who might have been scared off by Rebels being on a channel strictly geared towards children, and young ones at that. In fact, one of my biggest fears going into Rebels initially was that, being on Disney XD, it was going to be too childish and would be unable or unwilling to have much violence or truly in-depth stories. Thankfully, that really wasn't the case, and there were many times I was left stunned I was watching a show that was technically rated appropriate for 7-year-olds. Anyway, I think Rebels did a great job of walking that fine line between being appropriate for kids and still being highly appealing to adults as well. Nevertheless, in a world of seemingly infinite entertainment options for children, I think Disney and Lucasfilm's best bet to lure the younger audience in is to actually gear their shows more towards adults or parents, who will then have a way to bring their children into Star Wars and be able to share something they love with them. I just don't know that many kids found and fell in love with Rebels on their own. I could certainly be wrong about that, but again, kids these days have so many choices when it comes to what they watch or do with their time that I'd imagine they're a very hard demographic to lure in. And, thanks in large part to the success of Rebels and Clone Wars before it, I really do think Disney and Lucasfilm will try to push the envelope a bit with this next series and really try to bring in the older crowd that, again, may have shied away from a Star Wars cartoon on Disney XD, which is why you also, I think, bring a huge name character into the mix for the next show, someone like Luke Skywalker. In fact, since it's almost guaranteed now, after how Rebels ended, that this next show will take place between episodes 6 and 7, I would question their sanity not to use Luke. And I'm not saying he'll be the main character in the show or even the focal point, but it'd be foolish not to use him. A lot of people were disappointed with the Luke Skywalker they got in episode 8, so you have a lot of fans out there eager to see the Luke Skywalker they thought they were going to get. So here's your chance to give them that. Furthermore, I think one of the biggest, most interesting mysteries in Star Wars right now just might be what happened to Luke, how it all went so wrong for him. A show that begins to really delve into that mystery seems like a logical way to get people to watch something they may have otherwise skipped, and in the process, get them hooked on animated Star Wars. Next, with this new show, you also of course have to cater to the fans of animated Star Wars you've already created. This will obviously be done by following the story of Sabine and Ahsoka as they search for Ezra. What this could also do is take us to places in the Star Wars galaxy we've never been to before, at least in the new canon, like the unknown regions. And with the popularity of Thrawn, I could see them bringing the Chiss ascendancy into the mix. I could even see, as crazy as it may sound to you, that Ezra and Thrawn have become allies for some reason. I mean, who knows what those two may have went through together. One way or the other though, I think when Sabine and Ahsoka eventually do find Ezra, which my guess would be how season 1 ends, he'll have changed in some respect. He won't be the same Ezra that they last saw. Now, do I think something crazy will have happened to him, like he'll become Snoke? Highly unlikely, but I guess who knows. I even think right away in the first episode, we'll have an encounter that likely a lot of us fans have been eager to see, or at least I have, and that'd be between Luke and Ahsoka. I think Luke will even initially go with them in search of Ezra, and we do know Luke did a lot of traveling before he even began to rebuild the Jedi Order. But something will happen soon after that forces Luke to go his own separate way, and we won't see much more of him in Season 1. Whatever this reason for his departure is, however, will likely play a bigger factor in the story down the road. Also, tying in with Ezra being changed when they find him, I really do think he'll end up being a foil to Luke Skywalker in this time period. I don't think Ezra will go dark side, mind you, or that he'll be evil or anything of that sort, but something tells me he's going to come away from his little road trip with the space whales with a great understanding of the Force, and may even come to the realization, right or wrong, that the Jedi need to end, and that they're part of the problem. Luke then having to deal with an Ezra who wants the Jedi to end not because he's evil, but because he has legitimate issues with them, could even lay the groundwork for why Luke will eventually turn from the Jedi. Perhaps the final confrontation between Ezra and Luke, which is how I could see Season 2 ending for example, has Ezra giving a warning to Luke about what will happen if he starts to rebuild the Jedi Order, and Luke ignores him, and Season 3 shows Luke starting his new order. At least something like this is what I could see the next animated show being like, and as I said before, I really would be stunned if they don't use Luke in this next series. He's one of the most popular characters in Star Wars, and a show that really lays the groundwork for the Luke we got in The Last Jedi may help some fans who just will not accept what he was like in that movie, and perhaps they'll even begin to come around. Then again, as one of those disappointed fans, it's hard to believe anything would convince me Luke would ever give up on the Jedi. Lastly, another interesting question the show could eventually answer is about Force sensitivity being passed on from one generation to the next. We know the Skywalkers obviously pass on the Force to the next generation, but are they the exception or the rule? I'd be very curious to see if this show brings Jacen Syndulla into the mix, and if it does, if he's Force sensitive like his father or not. Could he even be one of Luke's first students, and maybe even a Knight of Ren right now? I mean, we know Luke took on about a dozen students at first, and that when Ben Solo turned to the dark side, half joined him and the other half were killed. What if Jacen Syndulla was one of those students who turned and went with Kylo Ren? What if Jacen Syndulla is the main character of the later seasons of this show and plays a big part in the fall of Ben Solo? Doubtful, sure, but the possibilities for this show are endless, and I've only scratched the surface of some of the things that could be done with it. And with Dave Filoni at the helm, I'm sure it's going to be much better than I can possibly imagine right now. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think the next animated show will be like. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.